Welcome everyone to our favorite game show. Today's episode is about who can build the best car spoiler. Introducing contestant 1, we have Haley. Introducing contestant 2, we have Ryan. And for our final contestant today, we have Ben. Introducing today's contest, our contestants will be designing their own spoilers and competing to see which one has the highest downforce to drag ratio, the smallest mass, and the highest downward force to mass ratio. The spoiler is an attachment that goes on the back of a vehicle to manage the air going around it. Spoilers became prevalent in the 1960s as automakers sought to improve the aerodynamics of race cars and other performance vehicles. Later, automakers were motivated to increase aerodynamics of all vehicles to generate higher mileage due to fuel economy regulations, leading them to work even harder to come up with different spoilers that will lead to the lowest drag force on the vehicle, which is what our contestants will be doing today.
I approach this by thinking about the spoilers on Formula One cars and how they have two different scoops with different radius curves. While this can create higher amounts of drag than other spoiler designs, it also ideally has significantly more lift, making the drag ratio good.
I chose this particular spoiler because when designed correctly, it produces a large amount of downforce with little drag and allows for the car to go faster and handle better. Also, the spoiler is relatively small, so it doesn't add much weight to the vehicle.
I'm going to use my design for my spoiler based on the Fast and the Furious movie. I loved the Fast and the Furious movie growing up, so I'm going to make mine look like my favorite character's car.
This is my spoiler design, and it flies.
This is my spoiler. I'm hoping mine doesn't fly.
Here's my design of my spoiler.
We use the equations relating to drag and lift coefficient with the idea that sacrificing downforce to create higher amounts of lift. We use the equation for lift and drag coefficients, and by increasing the frontal and planform area of the spoiler, we can create more downforce at the cost of more drag. But by making the planform area larger than the frontal area, theoretically the spoiler should create more downforce than drag.
The Billy equation learned in class is used to find the velocity from the wind tunnel and from the different heights of the water.
From our fluids class, we learned about how the drag force of the airflow and the lift effects on a car, and how whenever shown in these two photos, as the wind is going, you want to have a spoiler that will create an angle that allows for the drag to be going past and where the wind isn't being trapped right here, that causes more of a drag. And with lift, we're going to create this downward force, which is caused by this having this angle where the wind is hitting, pushing the car down, and not allowing for the wind to have a force pushing it.
All right, and let's go test Haley's spoiler on the CDF. All right, and then next up we have Ben's spoiler on the CDF. And finally we have Ryan's spoiler to be tested on the CDF. Alright, and now let's take a look at Haley's results from the CDF testing. Alright, and here we can see Ben's results from the CDF testing. And then finally we can look at Ryan's results from the CDF testing. Alright, so in the blue we have Haley's spoiler. The orange spoiler down there at the bottom is Ben's. And the green spoiler is Ryan's. So by these results, the downforce drag ratio of Ryan's spoiler was the highest, followed closely by Haley, and we're not sure what Ben did. Alright, so then here Haley's spoiler is in the purple, and then Ryan's is blue, and Ben is still bringing up the rear in green. As you can see by this graph here, Ryan's won this as well with the highest downforce to mass ratio, followed by Haley, and then Ben in the rear. Alright, and the winner of our CDF testing is Ryan. And now we're going to test Haley's spoiler in the wind tunnel. Now for Ben's spoiler in the wind tunnel. And lastly, we can test Ryan's spoiler in the wind tunnel. This graph shows the comparison of the downforce to drag ratio for each spoiler in the wind tunnel testing. For the blue, we have Haley, the orange is Ben, and the green one is Ryan. As you can see from this, Haley's spoiler won, with Ryan finishing second and Ben in last. Alright, so this chart shows the comparison of the downforce to mass ratio for each different spoiler through the wind tunnel testing. Haley being in blue, Ryan in green, and Ben in orange. We can see that Ryan won this competition. Haley finished second, and Ben was in last again. Our winner for the wind tunnel testing was Haley, who barely squeaked out round 8. We assumed that the temperature of the real car and our test car was the same. This information was used for the scale modeling theory, which allowed us to find the velocity. The velocity change went from 14.67 meters per second in the wind tunnel to 0.643 meters per second actual car. This allowed for the density and the dynamic viscosity to cancel out, resulting in the drag and lift forces being the same between the model and the real life car.
The biggest thing I need to change is obviously creating more downward force. I think putting the spoiler on an angle would help create more downward force and be more beneficial.
The lesson that I learned is this data that I got from my spoiler was about accurate to why people use that spoiler as their main design. However, I would have liked to find what the optimal angle would have been for the spoiler and seen if that changed the drag or lift and kind of how that correlates.
I learned that to create less drag, I can increase the radius of the scoops on the spoiler and make them longer and shorter. I can also add a lip on the mounting pins that will keep the spoiler high enough that it catches more airflow.
Based on the results from the CFD testing and the wind tunnel testing, Haley and Ryan's were both very close. We will leave that up for you guys to decide who actually won the competition, but we do know that Ben's flew.